In the last video, we've built this and it's starting to look good. We've got ceilings, walls, floors, lights, and so on. Now I want to introduce you to a powerful feature of the theme engine called the pattern matcher. And the pattern matcher allows you to define your own patterns, and the pattern engine would then run that pattern all over your dungeon and try to match that pattern. And if found, it would run the rules that you've specified. So we're going to create a pattern to match a setup like this, where we have a wall over here and another wall 90 degrees over here. And if found, then we would like to have a curved corner wall in its place. So let's get started. Let's open up the theme. And this is the theme that we've been working with. Now, I did not open this in the theme editor mode, but rather in the theme editor window by double clicking on the asset. And now on the top right corner, you would see another tab called pattern matcher. So you can switch between these two and they both share the same viewport. So real quick, let's set up the graph here. Let's set cell flow Foundry graph, make sure that the engine content plugin content is enabled, and cell flow graph, and that would build your dungeon. And also set up the just click on an empty space and set up the correct grid size, and double click a mesh. Okay, so now we are in the theme editor window. Let's dock that up. And if I switch over to the pattern matcher here, you can define your own patterns, and these patterns would run on a global level, as we'll see shortly. So all right, start by creating the add button. This would add a pattern rule, and you can have multiple of these, and they would run one by one throughout the entire dungeon and try to fit the pattern that you define here and execute your rule. So this is your working area where you could define a tile block or a edge block or a corner block like a pillar. Edge blocks would be your walls, these would be your ground. So right click, add new rule, and when you select this, you see that you have a blueprint graph below it. So every block here that you add, so I'm going to right click, add a new one, will have its own blueprint, and you can drag and drop these anywhere. So if I want to turn this, if I want to move this around and place it here or here, so let's go ahead and delete this. Go ahead and delete that as well. And let's start with a very simple example. Let's make a pattern where we search for a ground tile that is right adjacent to, right next to the wall tile. So I'm going to create a tile block here, add new rule, and right click, marker exist condition, and here we will search for ground, and make another one, add new rule, and here we'll search for wall. So the pattern matcher is going to take this setup and run it throughout your dungeon, and it'll also rotate it around 90-degree steps. And once found, and if a pattern like this is found, which it will pass in this case, it's going to run this on pattern selector, and whatever you specify over here is going to execute. And you can put in your execution action rules anywhere you like in any of these nodes. So let's emit a marker, and we can call it anything. So let's say my prop. So what this has done is, if a pattern over here would have matched, it would emit a marker somewhere in this range over here. It would emit a marker named my prop. So if I go back here, you won't have that marker here because we haven't created it, but you can always create it. Right click, add marker node, and give it that same name. These are case sensitive, so you need to be mindful of that. Now let me emit a, go here, start, let me go to this, shapes, let's add in a cube. And you can see this in action. So if I switch over, you see it has worked. So you can give more advanced things. Let's say I want this prop only to appear if we have two walls, only in this case, for example, and none of these. So you just go ahead and add another rule and say marker exists. And it just comes over here. Now, let's say when it was trying to match this piece of the area in the dungeon, it saw that we do have walls here and we do have walls here, but this edge has multiple markers. It has a door marker and it has a few wall markers, 3 wall markers. So you can add in more rules here with conditional operation. So I could say wall exists and let's say marker exists, copy paste, change this to door and give not. So I want a wall but not a door, right? We make sure that a door doesn't exist here. And we got this. In this place, right? But we do have it in here. Why? Because this is still wall. So let's select this, copy paste all of this, delete and paste, Control V. So you can do this. So now let's add a corner rule over here. All right, so let's start clean, delete anything that you have on your working area. And now that we want to create this corner tile, we need to see how the pattern might look like. If you want a curved corner mesh like this, you probably want to search for a ground tile here, here, and here, and make sure that we do not have a ground tile over here. And we also want to make sure that we do have a wall edge over here and here. So let's quickly put that in. So I'm going to add a new rule, marker exists, ground, and copy this, paste, paste. Also paste here, but we modify this to make sure that it does not exist. Okay, so this pattern, although it might have matched, we are not doing anything with it. So let's go ahead and emit a marker. Now we have to decide where we want to emit it. We can emit it in any of these. If I emit it here, the marker would be placed in this spot. If I emit it here, the marker would be placed here, and we just have to go back to the theme graph, go to the node and adjust the offset of your mesh accordingly. So I think we would insert it here in this space. So let's select this and say emit marker, and we'll call this wall corner out. So let's copy this and go back to the theme editor and make that marker node. Now let's look at the wall mesh. We are inside the props. Let's go back up and we have this, and we want to use this mesh. So let's add this. and you see it has inserted it over here. However, it has not inserted in all of the in the entire elevation, and we can fix that. So switch back to the pattern mode, and here if you select the node that was responsible for emitting this marker, so that came from here, select this, go to the blueprint of that block, and here you have this node wall emit marker wall corner out. Now while we are emitting this marker, we have the option to emit copies along all the elevations. So if we are here, we know what the elevation for this place would be, and it would emit it all the way up. So if you were to emit something here with this flag on, it's going to make copies of it throughout the 4 floors that we have here. It's going to make only once. However, if I click on this here, that's not really going to work because we don't have any metadata here, and there is no elevation in this because we are outside the dungeon where we search for where we do not have a ground, and that's where we're inserting it, and it makes sense, there is no elevation here. So if you're emitting something and you want that metadata, it makes more sense to emit it from somewhere inside. We can always adjust the pivot from the theme editor, right? But if you're emitting something, if we were to emit it from here, right, so we know that the elevation is 4 here, so we're gonna, let me select this node and delete that, or cut it, Control X, and then I'll come over here and Control V, paste that, and we are emitting it out, and you see it has emitted it in all of the elevations. If I uncheck it, it's only once. Now I can go ahead back to the theme editor, and I can easily adjust this. So let's save, and I'm going to close this and switch over to the theme. This is going to rebuild, and let's double click this and adjust by 180 degrees, and then we move back. Perfect. We also want to move it back here, and we have this. Very nice. Now we do have to do a few more things. We want to get rid of the wall marker here because it's getting in the way. So now that we have let me switch back to, so let me save this file and then go back to the normal mode, exit out of it, and open the theme window. Great, so this has been aligned, but we want to get rid of these walls, right, because we have a curved wall. So go back to the pattern matcher, and one rule that we missed to add here is that we also want to make sure that walls exist here, right? Marker exist, wall, add that, and copy this rule and paste it here. All right, so this is how it should be anyway. So we have ground, and 2 walls, and make sure that we do not have a wall, and if that succeeds, then we emit another marker, and from that marker we inserted this. But now we want to get rid of this because it's getting in the way, right? So we want to get rid of these walls. So if the rule succeeds, it will run on pattern selected on all the blocks in the pattern, including this. So here we get a chance to get rid of it. So remove marker and type in wall. So you see one side of it is gone. Now let's do the same thing here. Remove marker, wall. Again, these are case sensitive, so make sure that the W is capital. And we also want to get rid of the pillar over here. So right click, add new rule, and remove marker. Let me go back, get the name for this wall separator, copy, come over here, select this, remove the marker with this name. Done. Very nice. All right, this is looking good. We do have a few issues like this where it sees that we have a wall here and we have a wall here, and this basically matches the rule, but it has created this for us. So we want to add another rule, make sure that we do not have a wall in this place, and that will fix this, because we don't want this curve here because we have a wall here. We want this to be straight. So right click, add a rule, marker exists, wall, and not. So if you have a wall here, it's not. So copy this, copy rule, paste here, so we don't get that artifact. And we have something like this. Now we do have a problem here. We have a height variation change here, so we don't want this pattern to run when we have a change in height. So we want all the ground nodes to be on the same height, which is not the case over here. So another fix for this would be select the pattern here. So you're looking at the pattern rules, and same height markers. You want to make sure that the markers in this pattern are all on the same height. So the check we want to do is for the ground marker. So put in ground, and it has found out that these do match, but the ground markers are not on the same height, so it didn't match over here. So that fixed it for us. And in the next video, we are going to add in a corner for this one and fix up these gaps over here by adding another ground mesh over there.